Perhaps you'd like to join me in a little experiment before we start this session. So taking your dominant hand, for me that's my right hand, and just begin to make a fist. And then squeeze that fist like you're squeezing the juice out of a lemon. So squeeze, 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 squeeze. And then just notice what's happened to your breathing. And you can let go of that fist now. But if you're anything like me, you just stop breathing completely. And not just that, but you had this like tension around here. Even though we were tensing muscles over here, there was this kind of closing down around the chest, a kind of tightness. And this is a really simple way of illustrating the relationship between breathing and tension. So the more tension we feel in the body, the less we breathe. And the less we breathe, the more tense we actually feel. We create this cycle. But it works both ways. So by breathing slowly and deeply, we can actually release some of that tension. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail towards the end of this video. But the theme of this year's Breathing Festival is change your breath, change your world. And I'm going to be sharing with you some techniques for how we can begin to see the world slightly differently, and in particular see the connections between things more easily. And we call that skill creativity. I'm Tom Granger, and I'm an author and meditation educator, and I'm really passionate about finding new ways of talking about and explaining meditation in really experiential ways. My most recent book, Draw Breath, The Art of Breathing, combines breathwork and mindfulness meditation and really simple drawing challenges, really just doodling, scribbling, to teach people meditation in a new way. And I'm going to be sharing some of the techniques from that book today, really simple. So don't worry if you're someone who's like not into drawing. It's not like we're going to be drawing things from life. It's going to be really easy stuff, really accessible, and hopefully give you some more insight and more deep understanding of what meditation is. But first, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Dan and everyone at the Breathing Festival for inviting me to take part this year. It really is an honor to be on the bill with some of my absolute heroes from the world of breathwork. I'm really honored, and I really hope that I can make this video worth your time. So by the end of this video, we'll have got through 3 reasons why the breath is central to every major spiritual tradition around meditation. We'll have learned 2 new ways of exploring meditation and what meditation can be with just a pencil and a piece of paper. And we'll have learned 1 way of instantly becoming more creative using the breath. So what is the connection between breathwork and meditation and creativity? Well, if we take the ancient Greeks as an example, what comes to mind for you when you think of ancient Greek culture? It's probably the Acropolis, the big buildings and all the sculptures, or it might be mythology and Hercules and legend, or it might be plays and drama and the masks, and there's just such a rich culture of ideas. But it wasn't just the arts they were amazing at. Ideas that are still relevant to us today, like democracy and the scientific method, came from ancient Greece. So how did they actually come up with these ideas? How did they have such enduring ideas? Well, if you'd asked a person in ancient Greece that question, how do you come up with your ideas? They wouldn't really understand, because they had a very different idea about how we have ideas. They thought ideas were something that happened to you rather than something you did. So they had these gods in their pantheon called the muses. And we still talk about muses today, don't we? Oh, he's my muse, or she's my muse, or that's my muse. It means someone or something that inspires us. And so the ancient Greeks had this idea that the muses would breathe their ideas into the artists of ancient Greece. A helpful image for that is like embers. When you blow onto embers and then it creates a fire, your breath kind of fuels that fire. That's the kind of image we would have for how that worked. So the gods were giving people their ideas. They weren't something that happened internally for them. And this is why we get our idea, or rather our word, inspiration. Inspirare is a Latin phrase meaning breathe into, which is a Latin understanding of this Greek idea. So the connection between breathing and creativity really permeates even our language today. And this idea about our ideas happening to us really rings true to our experience of having ideas. So if you think of the last time you had a really good idea, or when you were trying to solve a problem and you just couldn't, and then you went away and you just gave up and just went for a walk, or you were lying in bed or having a shower and the idea just hit you. That's actually how we have ideas. It's when we're at our most calm, most relaxed, when the volume of the ego is turned way down. That's when these ideas come to us. And that's something the Greeks really understood. And they just used their mythologizing ways and their ideas about their gods to explain it. As someone who has to be creative for my job, I'm really fascinated by how, if we can't deliberately have our ideas, how can we cultivate a mind that is quiet enough to actually hear our ideas when they come to us? And how do we create a body that's actually fertile ground for having these ideas? And you can probably guess that it's through the breath that we can do this. We can actually use the breath to train our attention. And this takes me to my first idea about why breath is so central to every meditative tradition. And that is that the breath is always present. If you're experiencing the sensations of the breath, then by definition, you're living in the moment, because you can't be aware of the sensations from 2 minutes ago. That's a memory, not a sensation. And so that's why we use the breath to train our attention in meditation. And we're going to have a go at a little game of attention now. So all you need for this is a piece of paper and a pencil. I'm going to use a big piece of A3 paper and a pen, just so that it's clearer what I'm doing, so you can actually see what it is that I'm doing. And what we're going to do is take our pen and our paper and draw 2 lines down the page like this to create 3 columns. So I'll just demonstrate. And then in each of our columns, we're going to draw 7 dots. So coming down the columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then just trying to make your dots in a line, with each other. So there's a bit of neatness here. So what we end up with is 3 columns, 7 dots in each column. And then we just add a little starting dot at the bottom and draw a circle around it. And then in the bottom of each of our columns, we write past, present, and future. And what we're going to do is essentially play a kind of game with our attention. We're going to aim to focus our attention on the sensation of breath coming in and out through the nose. So just noticing what that feels like for a moment now. Can you notice that sort of subtle sensation of air? It might be cooler as you breathe in, slightly warmer as you breathe out. And what we're going to try and do is keep our attention here without being distracted by thought. And inevitably, you will be distracted by thought, and that's completely normal. And I'll just demonstrate what we're going to do out loud. So I'm placing my pen on my starting dot, and then focusing my attention on that air coming in and out of my nose. And almost immediately, my mind has been taken back to something I was saying earlier. And I was concerned that I hadn't been clear enough, or that I wasn't moving quite fast enough. Just a sense of little hint of worry about how that had gone. So that's my mind taking me to the past. So I'm just going to draw a little line to represent that I've gone from the present into the past. And I'm just going to draw a line back into the present column and refocus my attention on my nose, on the air coming in. And I just had the thought, oh no, what if I don't get distracted by thoughts? This isn't going to work, which is a thought about the future. I was kind of projecting into the future what might go wrong. So that's a thought about the future. So then I take my pen over into the future and then back to the present and refocus my attention on the air coming in and out of my nose. So just see if you can have a go at that yourself now in your columns. And you might want to pause the video. I'll just continue doing it. But if I finish before you, you can just pause the video and finish it in your own time so that you don't feel rushed. But what we end up with is a map, in a sense, of just where our mind has been and how much our mind naturally dances away into the past and into the future, either kind of worrying or analysing the past or planning or fretting around in the future. And you can see from mine that as this exercise went on, my mind was more and more in the future. My mind was trying to prepare me for when this exercise was over. It was thinking, okay, what are you going to say next, Tom? And the other thing this illustrates is really that it's impossible for us to stop thinking. So there's this big myth about meditation that we're supposed to be able to clear our minds completely, when really the purpose of meditation, the real benefit of meditation, is training ourselves to notice when the mind has actually gone, notice where it's gone, and then bringing it back to the present moment, back to the sensations of the breath. And if we do that over and over and over again, we train this reflex that we take out into the rest of our lives, where our mind can actually recognize the thoughts it's having while it's having them. And each time we do that is a moment of choice, a moment where we can actually respond to our lives instead of just acting on autopilot. So yeah, coming back to the breath over and over again with curiosity, that's the goal of mindfulness, and it trains our awareness to have a different perspective on thoughts and a deeper grounding in the present. And if you think about what that means for creativity, if we're more aware of what's actually happening around us, if we're actually paying attention to the things around us, each one of those things becomes an ingredient in a potential creative idea. And this takes me to my next point about the breath and why the breath's always at the center of meditation. And that is that the breath is always changing. From one moment to the next, the breath is in a constant state of flux. So if you think about, even when you hold your breath, it's changing. The experience of needing to breathe in is creeping in and creeping up. So the experience of the breath is constantly changing. It's what the Greeks would have called flux and what the Buddhists would call impermanence. And when things are in a constant state of change, when they're constantly dancing around, it's much easier to bring our curiosity to them. And that's what we're going to do with our second exercise. So taking your piece of paper and maybe having it this way now, and you just do it on the back of that piece of paper you just had. And again, I'll do this with a pen, but you can do it with a pencil or a pen, whatever you've got to hand. And we're going to draw a little starting dot. And then across this page, we're actually going to have a go at drawing our breath. And this is really to illustrate how we can focus on something that's always changing. And so what we're going to do when we're drawing breath is draw up as we inhale and down as we exhale. And the more kind of imperfect our image is, the more likely it is that you're being true to your actual experience of the breath, that you're listening to your breath and reporting your experience to the page. So it's almost like you're an artist and the breath is your subject. And one thing that's really key is to allow your drawing to be guided by the speed of your breath. So not allow your breath to be guided by the speed of your drawing. if that makes sense. And I'll demonstrate in a moment. But before you start, it's really key that you place your pen on the starting dot and just observe 3 natural breath cycles. And this is a bit like watching an escalator before you get on it. So you're trying to notice the speed and the rhythm and the natural organic flow of your breath. So just taking 3 breaths now. And then as your 3rd out breath becomes the in breath, seeing if you can ride that experience almost like a wave, moving your pen in time with the breath. Just letting this be your last arc of drawing. And just place your pen down. And just pay exactly the same amount of attention to this next breath as though you're still drawing it. And that is all there is to meditation. We can only meditate 1 breath at a time. But by training our awareness on our breathing, by bringing it back and back to the breath, and by being curious about this experience that we take completely for granted and that we see as very everyday and mundane, the more curiosity we can actually bring to that experience, the more we can try and interpret it in new ways or breathe as though this is the first time we've ever experienced it. The more we train our kind of muscle of curiosity. If you can be curious about something as natural and sort of something like the breath that just permeates every moment of your life, that it almost becomes invisible. If you can train your curiosity on that, then you can be curious about anything. And it's by being curious about things that we take for granted that we really begin to train creativity, because we begin to see the things around us as the things themselves rather than ideas about them. And this means we can be malleable with their meaning and actually begin to apply things that we think we already know to other ideas and create new ideas. One thing that can happen that people can struggle with there is they begin to draw as though their breath is being led by the pencil, so we end up kind of going. And if that happened for you and you want to have another go, just allow your breath all the way out. And wait for the natural urge to breathe in. And just ride that like a wave. And I'm going to invite you to pause the video and have a go at that in your own time. Before I do that, I'd just like to share with you some other ones you might want to play with. So you might like to draw a circle, and again, draw up as you inhale and down as you exhale. Or you might like to draw a spiral, so similar to the circle, but just keeping it going for multiple breaths. So breathing in, drawing up, breathing out, drawing down. And again, allowing the pace and the speed of your pencil to match that of your breath, never the other way around, because otherwise we end up going and like speeding up our breathing to draw. And there's another way of doing the spiral, which is to go from the outside. So you might want to have a play with drawing a spiral this way and see if that changes your experience of the breath, whether it slows it down or speeds it up naturally, just by being aware of it in that sense. So yeah, I invite you to pause the video and then hit play once you've had a little play with that. So this might seem like a newfangled way of meditating, or something that maybe you've not seen before, but this is actually grounded in a really ancient technique used by Zen Buddhists. So you've probably seen this before. This is an Enso circle, and we kind of know roughly that this is related to Buddhism and related to meditation, but we might not know why. So just to explain a little bit of background about it, if you watch a Zen Buddhist monk drawing an Enso circle, they'll wait there with a loaded brush until they feel the kind of spontaneous movement happening itself. And then they draw this circle in time with the exhalation, with a natural breath. And there's this real focus in Zen arts with representing a spontaneity of nature, but trying to be spontaneous in how you actually do that, because the human being is part of this spontaneous pattern that we call nature. So it's a really fascinating art form. But not all of us have 30 years to become a master of Zen calligraphy. So in the new book, Draw a Breath, I've created like a kind of distillation of some of that. So inside the book, there's hundreds of breath drawing illustrations where you draw up on pink lines as you breathe in and down on blue lines as you breathe out. And each one's designed to connect you to your breath in a novel way. And each illustration teaches you something unique and new about the physiology of the breath, or the psychology or the philosophy of the breath. And I'll explain at the end of the video where you can go to get some sort of free print at home ones of those if that's something you're interested in. So we've explored a little bit about how changing how we pay attention to the breath can begin to train our awareness to be more in the present moment, and how we can create that reflex to be present using training our attention on the breath. We've also learned how cultivating that sense of curiosity around the breath trains curiosity almost like a muscle. And when we can be present and curious about what's really happening now in our bodies and in our environments, we give ourselves the real building blocks for creativity, because we can actually begin to look at things in a new way. Not only are we more aware of them, we're looking at them as they actually are. We're actually observing the shapes and the colors around us, rather than getting lost in the thoughts or the ideas that we're having about things. And when we do that, we can begin to see past our expectations and our ideas of an object or a concept or people, and see them for their potential. And this is where, that's really the base foundation of creativity, because when you can see past something's intended meaning, its meaning becomes malleable, and you begin to meld ideas together and create something new. But this is all very mind stuff that we've been talking about. What about the body? Is there a way of cultivating that relaxed sense of creativity that we were talking about at the very beginning? Well, yes, obviously. And I'm going to tell you it's the breath. And it brings me really to my third point about why the breath is so central in every culture to spiritual tradition of meditation. And that is how the breath is a window into our emotional state. So if you think about every emotion that you experience, it has a breath state kind of attached to it. So if you think about maybe crying or laughing or gasping or sighing, these are all styles of breath. And if we see someone breathing like that, we can get a real idea of how they're actually feeling. So the breath really communicates our emotional state. And this works with kids as well. If you try and communicate with a toddler who can't even speak yet, and you go, "Ah!" If you breathe like that, they're gonna know what you're trying to tell them, that they should be aware of something. That's just how deeply ingrained our emotional reality is to our breathing style. But it's a two-way street. So the breath isn't just being affected by the emotions, the breath can also affect the emotions. And it does that by changing the nervous system. And so I have these bubbles here. I'm just going to blow some bubbles. And you can join me in your imagination. So just blowing onto your fingertip as though it's a bubble blower. And just getting a sense of how that feels on your finger to blow like that. And maybe remembering the last time you blew bubbles, probably when you were a kid, or when you were with a kid, I don't know. And begin to notice what you're actually changing in your breath. What aspects of the breath are you having to change to breathe like that? So you're probably beginning to change the speed. You're slowing the breath down. And you're also elongating the exhale. So the ratio of the breath is changing. The inhale shorter and the exhale's longer. You're also making the breath smooth. So you're changing the texture of the breath. And you're breathing through your mouth rather than your nose. And you're breathing deliberately and consciously rather than unconsciously and automatically. So we have this incredibly nuanced control over the breath. But if you think about that, it's quite strange because the breath's something we don't normally have to think about. It's something that just happens naturally. And if you think about all the other parts of your body that are keeping you alive, that are controlled by the autonomic nervous system, so your heart beating, your veins dilating and controlling your blood pressure, the movement of your gut, the cycling of your hormones and the releasing of the hormones, all of these different aspects of your autonomic nervous system that you don't have to think about, but they keep you alive from one moment to the next, and they're constantly changing. The breath is the only element of that we can actually have conscious control over. But by changing the breath, we can change the rest of the system. And this is where breathwork and changing the breath deliberately becomes key in a way that mindfulness alone really can't help us. So one of the limitations of mindfulness meditation is that while it trains us to be aware of the breath and notice and pay attention to the changes in the breath, it doesn't really give us any insight into how changing the breath itself changes how you pay attention. Bear with me. So I'm just going to invite you in one last experiment. So taking your hands and placing the fingertips together, and we're just going to place the hands on the belly, just below the belly button. And I'm just going to invite you to breathe into the palms of your hands. So almost like the breath is coming in through the nose and down to the palms of your hands. And our goal here is to breathe and soften the belly so that the belly expands with the in-breath. And as we do so, we just want to notice those fingertips just slightly parting. So just letting the belly be soft as we breathe in. Being aware of the breath, but really deliberately breathing down into the belly. And I'm just going to begin to count. See if you can breathe in time with my counting. So breathing in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. And just allowing your breath to be natural and your arms just to loosely hang by your side now. Just notice any difference in the body, in the movement of the breath in the belly, the chest, and also the state of mind. You know, what's the focus like now, having done that? And so all we were doing there, really, like, it's the simplest way of changing how we're breathing. We're not doing anything radical there. We're just giving our diaphragm enough space to move and then deliberately inviting the breath down into the belly. And when we do that, when we breathe slowly and deeply and diaphragmatically, our body receives it as a signal that we're safe in our environment. It sends a signal, up to our brain, to the oldest parts of our brain, that we're really safe where we are. And if you think about that in terms of our ancestors and our evolution, when we were cave people and we were being threatened by an enemy or an animal, or when we were looking for rewards, our stress system was ensuring that we were aware of our environment. We're looking out into our environment. But as soon as we became safe, the stress system would come offline and the rest and digest system would come online. And so when that happens, when we feel calm, we have two branches of vagal pathways that come down from our brain and join all of the internal organs of the body together. And when we're feeling safe, and that's reflected in the breath, or when we deliberately breathe as though we're safe, it's almost like, I like to think of the diaphragm as almost like pulling a light switch down that lights up this information in the body. So the more slowly and calmly and deeply we breathe, the more those information pathways light up, and the more information is traveling from the body up to the brain. And that's not just good for you because it's good for the body to know what's going on inside. It's also felt. We get a felt sense of this. So you may have had that experience of meditating for a little while and then noticing your heartbeat more strongly. And that's because these pathways of interoception, the body's ability to see into itself, is more alive. So it's not something abstract that we have to believe in. This is something we can get a real felt sense of. And not only that, but if you're somebody who struggles to focus in meditation and you just think, well, I can't do that, I can't do mindfulness meditation, try a bit of conscious breathing, try a bit of slow breathing first to prepare the mind and prepare the body. And you'll actually have more information traveling, more information to be curious about the breath, about what's happening internally. And this really connects us to our gut feeling. It's not just that opening these pathways is going to reduce hypertension because your body knows what the heart's doing, what the blood pressure's doing. It's not just going to begin to reduce IBS because your body knows what the gut's doing. It's actually going to connect you in a more kind of just human way to your intuition, to your felt sense of gut feeling, to your sense of like heart feeling. This is going to connect you. The words intuition and creativity are so closely linked. That's going to make you more creative just through being calm. So what did we learn? Well, we looked at why the ancient Greeks had the right idea about having ideas. We learned that the breath is central to every spiritual tradition because it's always present, it's always changing and unfolding, and that it connects us really deeply to our emotions. We learned 2 new ways of using a pen or a pencil to experience what meditation can mean, and we learned how belly breathing can really connect us to our gut feeling. So if you'd like to try some of the fun and funky breath drawings that I was talking about earlier, you can head to drawbreath.com, and on the resources page, there's loads of free samples there for you to print and have a go at home. And now for the shameless plug section. If you're keen for reminders to stop scrolling through Instagram and focus on your breathing, then follow me on Instagram @drawbreath. If you're the kind of person who likes watching videos about breathing and experts talk about breathing, then you're definitely going to be interested in my YouTube channel, Draw Breath, where I've interviewed lots of the speakers who are actually speaking at this festival. You could also join the Facebook group, which is called Draw Breath, if you just want to stay in the loop. And finally, thank you so much for staying with me to the end of this video. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. I'll be doing some workshops around the world over the next few years, so if you'd like to hang out and talk about breathing, then sign up to the mailing list at drawbreath.com. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and I really look forward to seeing you when the world opens up again.